Hello guys, welcome from YouTube. If anybody was watching, whoever's watching, this is Kalinik. I'm here with Nick and Troll Project. Um, and we'll be doing a tier list of the Swords and Sandals Immortals races today. And so we have 15 races and we'll talk about each and every one and we'll try to kind of rank them in the tier list of S tier and D tier. And this is all it's a lot of it is opinion and experience, and not everybody's experience and opinions are going to be the same. And I'm not just talking about us, I'm talking about whoever's watching the video. So somebody might feel a different way about it, but we're going to be talking from our perspective and what we've seen. So without further ado, let's get this started. So I guess we can just start with the first one, who is the first class that appears on the tier list, which is, I believe, what were they called? Hold on, the red ones.
Craggite.
Craggites. All right, the Craggites. So, uh, 2 bonus vitality. I'll just start instantly by hold on. 2 bonus vitality, bonus 10% hit chance in mountains, freezing conditions. I'm going to rate this very low. I think this is probably D tier or C tier. I'm gonna put it low C tier because it's just extremely unimpressive as a character that you choose to play with. They don't really have any sorry, they don't really have any notable advantages. The 10% hit chance finding in mountains is extremely situational, and even if it happens, it don't really, like, 10% is not a lot, and it's going to happen extremely rarely because there's so many terrains and places to fight in. The freezing weather conditions is also very situational. It could be useful, but it's not super big. The downside is you take an extra 10% damage from lightning attacks, and every race has a special ability that they have, and it can be used once. It can be used once per round, once per battle. And the one that the Craggites have is you boost your spirit by 30%, and it clears all negative status effect and knocks your enemy back. This is actually not too bad, not as bad as I remembered it was. So it's not too bad, but it's still not enough to warrant the whole race to be any higher on the tier list for me. And the 2 bonus vitality, especially in the early game, every race gets a 2 bonus for a stat, and 2 vitality in the start is not very helpful at all, in my opinion. I even kind of want to put it on G tier, but I'll just put it low C tier for now, and we'll see how it goes. Nick, you want to continue with the Kraken?
Yeah, sure. And I definitely agree that C tier is a good place for this one because in the beginning and perhaps also in the end throughout the entire game, spirit is something that is very powerful as it inspires you. And when you get the correct spirit buff, it can really help you smash through bosses and grand champions. And that's just amazing. So if you can get your spirit a little up and you use this one, you get like almost an instant inspire, and that will be very helpful, especially against champions with high defense, which you get a lot on Hellscape. The defense is really high. You really want to get that buff, which grants you a 100% hit chance, which will help you get through a lot of bosses a lot more easier. And I would say the rest of this character race is not really that impressive or something worth mentioning, but the skill is really interesting. It also removes negative status effects and knocks back your enemy. So those are also bonuses which lift up this race. So I think it can definitely be used with a build which helps you defeat bosses using inspiration. So I would put it again at C tier.
Troll Project, where to you?
A great C tier, and personally, the Craggite is just a combination of many other races. He tries to do everything, but other races are just better at what he does. For example, the Floralisk also has 2 bonus vitality, but he also gets 30% more health. Human boosts spirit by 50%, and the Cycladian's special ability just sounds like a much superior version. You just pull them towards you and stun them. It's way better than just pushing them away. The starting vitality is decent because vitality is kind of rare from as far as champions and random adventures are concerned, but yeah, there's not much to this guy.
So you agree you'd put it in a C tier kind of thing?
Yeah.
All right. Moving on, we have the. Is this the Fae or the? Hold on.
Yeah.
We have okay, the Fae. Well, actually, Trop, do you? I know you have a vocal opinion on this. So, do you want to start?
Sure. So the Fae, in my opinion, is the possibly the worst or maybe the second worst race in the game because he does have lightning resistance, but lightning isn't that common of a damage type. And the main problem with lightning is that if you get isn't the damage, but if you get hit by it, you can't use spells, which the Fae isn't resistant to. And the power is the species, especially elemental fusing, is only useful if you're a mage, and pure damage isn't the way to go as a mage in this game. And the starting stat is just 2 bonus charisma, which is just incompatible with the mage build.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not
I agree. It kind of has some similar issues to the Craggite, where it has some things that aren't exactly fitting of the race itself, because it has charisma, 2 bonus starting charisma, which is something a bard would want to start with. But then you have increased all elemental spell damage, although even though Faes aren't even supposed to be spellcasters, that's the Eldor Hathian's thing. So it kind of it's a weird. Yeah, it's a weird paradox and inconsistency there. And the bonus 10%, I never even considered the bonus 10% to environments for the species because they don't really even they're not consistent and often enough to warrant any actual advantage. Like bonus 10% to hit chance when fighting underground. Yeah, there is a bit more underground in some other, but even if it was 100% underground, a bonus 10% is not very impressive if you consider other species like the Cycladian or the I can't remember the Glamourzons. Like it's just not very impressive. And the spell damage by 33% is for the next 5 turns. Is that the next 5 turns for your 5 turns or overall 5 turns?
your 5
Your
turns.
5 turns. Okay, that's not that bad then maybe. It's still not that much though. So I mean honestly I don't know. I can agree that it could go D. It could also go C tier. It could go D tier. Yeah, honestly, I would say for its inconsistency, I would leave it high D tier, or I don't know. Nick, what do you think about this one?
Well, I think you two already mentioned it all. I would also put it at D tier
Okay.
because I just don't see any bonus except for that elemental damage. But as we talked about in the last video, the wizard class isn't really the best anyway. So it's but if you're gonna do that run, it's its only use. But yeah, The elemental
Yeah.
spells aren't really that great anyway.
Yeah, if you're gonna be a wizard, you're way better off going with the Eldor Hathians than the Phase anyway. So, yeah, just for that small increase of 33% for 5 turns for elemental spells, it's not really worth it. So, yeah, I guess we can just leave it in D tier for now. Okay, the Cycladians. Oof. Okay, I think this is S tier, either lowest tier, actually might be even highest tier, either S tier or at the lowest A tier. I think it's S tier because it's one of the best classes. In the best one of the best species in the game. I think. First, their 2 bonus strength, which is very good. It's straightforward. It's very good. They're a strength build mainly. Their special skill, Call of the Sea, is incredibly useful. In the Swords and Sandals Immortal game, it is extremely helpful, and one of the best meta strategies is to crowd control the enemies, which means make them miss as many turns as possible and buy yourself more turns in the process. When you're restarting skills or spells, when you need to wait more turns, like if you need 1 or 2 more turns to get a spell to reload, this is one of the most perfect classes for it, and it does 2 things with its special skill. You drag your opponent towards you if they're trying to run away. You stun them for 2 turns, which is incredible. It's an incredible skill. And another one of their very good skills, in my opinion, is Creatures of the Night. So it's not a skill, sorry. It's like a default advantage they have. Creature of the Night. Your damage is increased by 30% when fighting at night. And in this game, in Immortals, you can actually... I've done a run with the Cycladians as a strength build, and what I did was I mainly dueled at night, especially champions. Basically, you can wait for the part of the game cycles between day and night, and you can wait into the later day to use this to your advantage. So you basically always do 30% more damage whenever you fight. The only time you can't use this is at the final boss, the Starbound Gladiator, because it's never at night. It's always during the day, which is unfortunate, but it's still incredibly helpful for pretty much any of the other champions and gladiators you will fight. It's disadvantaged 0 phobia, 5% penalty to hit chance when fighting in deserts. 5% is not really anything special. It's not really a big number, and deserts are also not that common, I think. So, and also you have a 10% bonus to hit chance when fighting in beaches. Again, my opinion on the 10%, 5 and 10% bonuses in certain environments. But yeah, it's a nice other touch. But I think this is one of the best classes to have. It's incredible special skill along with the starting 2 bonus strength and the extra Creature of the Night with 30%. It's just too good to not use. I think this is an S tier race. Troll Project.
Yeah, I agree with the S tier placing. So to give some more context about nighttime, the in-game it's nighttime from 7 p.m. until 5 a.m. And there is this weird bug where if you open the info panel, the game will just go to 1 a.m. no matter what time it is, and without the day passing. And going to fight the traveling time to go fight the Grand Champion is 3 hours, so you can always fight them at nighttime very quickly. They're pretty much the high capable. Cycladians are capable of dealing the highest melee damage out of anyone else. Well, except the final boss. But yeah, very nice there for me.
Nice. Nick.
Yeah, I agree. Definite S tier because you can manipulate the game to always have that 30% bonus damage, except at the final boss. The ability is great. You literally get to stun your enemy twice for 2 turns with this one skill. And yeah, strength is just amazing to have. So all around great class. And I would say there are some races that I think might even be better or close to this one. We'll talk about those later. Well, I don't think it's the best necessarily. I think it's just worthy enough to be S tier.
Yeah, I agree. And also another thing I just thought about, we're kind of talking about it a little bit, but we should also try to kind of mention, like, whenever we talk about each race, kind of like mention which classes it works best with. The Cycladian obviously works with warrior and knight best because it's like an aggressive melee fighter build. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Cycladian S tier. Now, okay, next one, Eldor Hathian. They're it's an interesting race. I personally like it, but I'm not gonna let my like for the race for lore reasons be something that I rate it on. Let me just 2 bonus intellect. It's so I think it's a very situational race. It's either C tier, it's either like higher C tier or lower B tier, because it mostly applies to using it when you were playing as a wizard class. So like the wizard the class, the subclass is Spellblade, and the rest mage. Sorry, I forgot what the other the other ones were called exactly, but it's a situational race. It's not bad, but honestly, you know what? I'd probably put it C tier. Yeah, it's not even B tier. I'd probably put it C tier because I just remembered how bad mage is usually, and this not even being like one of the best classes is not. Mages, just like this race, and they kind of go hand in hand, but you have a very hard time in the early and mid games, especially with like this. The bonus intellect is very good for a mage, that's what it needs, but in the beginning that's not useful at all, so you kind of lose that advantage in the beginning and it's very hard. The 10% hit chance when fighting in deserts is irrelevant. The heatwave conditions not affecting you, that's good, but again, it's super situational. Essence regeneration is cut in half when that's a disadvantage in freezing weather. That could be rough, but again, it's kind of situational. Its special skill, the occult aura, is it's not bad. It's actually pretty decent, to be honest, because basically you if your opponent has 1000 HP, you take 20. It takes 20% off, so like 20% off the total HP, and then it anguishes them for 4 turns. Anguish is basically their attack gets cut in half for 4 turns. Or actually, I think they can someone correct me? Or I think they do half damage for 4 turns. I think that's what.
Yeah, half damage.
Yeah,
Half damage.
Yeah, so they do half damage for 4 turns, which is pretty good. In the late game, this it's mostly the anguish part that's good about it, because in the late game everybody has a lot of HP, and that 20% isn't really anything. Doesn't really do anything, and this is only one time skill use per round. So yeah, because the mage class is super low on the tier list, and this kind of goes with it. And this itself is not very, it's not super good as well. It's not super bad, but it's not anything super incredible. It's still higher C tier. I'd rate it higher than the Craggite, but yeah, it's nothing extraordinary about it, especially since how situational it is. Anybody else? Troll?
Yeah. The ideal class, in my opinion, for Eldor Hathian is Wizard Spellblade, where you use spells for crowd control, not for damage. And the Anguish effect can be stacked with the Necrotized effect, which you can apply to your opponent using necrotic damage magic. And if you stack them together, your opponent will deal 75% less damage. So that's kind of a niche this race has. And I'm not sure if the essence generation is cut in half even works at all. Maybe I just didn't go to the freezing weather regions at any point when I did the run as Eldor Hathian. The starting stat isn't the best, and I think there is a better race that we'll get to later for pure spellcaster. That's kind of it.
Where would you put it on the list? Do you agree that it would be like a C tier, high C tier, low B tier, or
high C tier?
Nice, yeah, pretty much. And by the way, we and I mean just to let everybody else who might be watching, listening, we don't when we do these videos, we don't like discuss all the classes, and we don't have we don't know what the other person is thinking about each and every class. Like, this is not scripted or anything like that. I'm sure we're not gonna agree on absolutely everything, but so far, and we are people from the community who have played Immortals in a lot of runs, or at least several. So far, our opinions do line up. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to mention that. Sorry for the interruption, Nick.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I think that agreement is kind of going to end here, because the question I'm asking myself is it's definitely better than the fake class, but is the Eldor Hathian race better than the Craggite race? And to be honest,
I would say yes on that.
To be honest, I don't think so, because, like I said, that spirit thing can be very powerful, and you also have that knockback, which can help. And to say you have somebody's damage for 4 turns, like, that can be helpful, but that's once per battle, and that can save you. But when you go to the Craggite and you use that mountain air buff, you can literally get an inspiration buff, which helps you mow down many bosses in the game, because you just go completely around their defense traits. So I would personally rank Eldor Hathians at high D tier.
That's a fair argument. My counter argument to that would be, well, you're technically right. Basically, these are two very different races that go with different builds, because, and basically you're comparing different classes, because like with the Eldor Hathian, you're going to be more. You're pretty much the only thing you can be is a wizard class, like a mage or a spellblade. While with the Craggite, I'm not even actually exactly sure what they're supposed to be. Like a melee build, maybe. But I mean, yeah, basically, it's like two different, kind of very different classes and races put together, being compared. So in terms of when we put races and classes in the same tier. I know we say like high tier or high C or low C. It doesn't necessarily need to be like that. I mean, I think me and Tro agree that it would be high C, even though Nick thinks it's like a high D. I still think this race has advantages to it, and I think it's better overall than Craggite. But I mean, yeah, it is ironic that you that I mentioned how this is not scripted, and right after that you do state your different opinions. So that's good.
I seized the moment. But yeah, to come back to that, I think the Craggite build the Craggite race is for indeed melee builds or ranged builds. So think warrior, think rogue, kind of that direction, and to then do as much damage as possible. Well, you have that 100% attack chance buff, and with the Eldor Hathians, the only buff wizards seem to get is that 2+ intellect, because that occult aura doesn't seem to be affected by intellect or wizard stats, as in the different subclasses of wizard don't seem to help that specific case as well. Because if you're a wizard and you're staying at range, like, yes, you could fight enemies that use magic attacks and ranged attacks, but most of the time you're fighting melee fighters as opponents, and when you're keeping them at distance, that occult aura isn't going to help because they're not going to damage you in the first place. But I think that's kind of my counter argument and why I would put it in D tier, because I just don't think it's better than Craggite, and I'm personally ranking this as how good are the races in general, and how well do they mix with all the classes, you know? And
That's true. That's a fair argument.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah, I could agree. Like I would say it's not. It doesn't hugely matter. Like basically, when we're putting, it doesn't hugely matter if the Eldor Hathian is in front of the Craggite when they're in the same tier. Yeah, honestly, I'm fine with leaving the Eldor Hathian in here because it's actually even more situational than the Craggite. Now that you do mention it, that is a fair argument. Troll, do you agree
What
that
does Troll think?
Yeah, do you agree we can leave it here?
Yeah, I'm not hugely conflicted about, like, it's not exactly the best two races, and yeah, to be honest, my laptop kind of shit itself for a minute, and I didn't hear a lot of that.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm
let's
fine
move on to the next one.
Yeah, let's do the Floralisk, and let's do a change of pace here. Instead of me starting with all of them, one of you start with the Floralisk.
I will go.
Mm-hmm.
While the Floralisk gets Vitality, which is very helpful when going with this race. This is also a race that I think goes well with the Priest, especially with the Monk subclass, which we talked about in depth in our previous video ranking classes. And I think its ability, Photosynthesis, is great because you get a lot of health back over 4 turns. And it also cleanses a random negative status effect. And you also have the massive size buff, which gives you 30% extra total health as well. So that's even more vitality. And we also see here that, yeah, you do have a weather buff, but we have already talked about weather buffs and environment buffs. They don't really matter when fighting the final boss. And also, the Grand Champion Arena is just one arena, so. And the debuff isn't that bad. You get 10% extra damage from Axis. Yeah, just don't get unlucky fighting an opponent with an axe, and you should be alright. And I think this is one of the best races in the game. This is definitely a high S tier because it's very compatible with like knight builds, but also priest builds when going for vitality and survivability. It's not the best. We'll get to the best one later, but this one is amazing for. It is the best for going for priest, I think. But I think I've said my due. This is definitely a good race, and I would put it at S tier. high S tier.
Okay, putting it in S tier now, and let me just say two things. A lot of these, a lot of the when considering a race and a class for this game, it's a lengthy game, and it's important to be able to defeat like all the arena champions, bosses, and stuff like that. But one of the most important things is to be able to be consistent and to be able to defeat the last two bosses. When one of them is optional, Emperor Antares, he's optional in the dungeons. However, if you do choose to fight him, he's extremely powerful. And so choosing a class and a race hugely contributes into how the fight with him and the Starbound Gladiator, which is the last boss, is going to go. And let me actually, I just thought of something. Let's do a quick game. I'm gonna count to 3, and when I say 3, all of us are gonna say which race we think is the most amazing and best race in our opinion right now. Ready? 1,
Yes.
2, 3. Glamourzon.
Floralisk.
Sagan.
Ooh.
Sagan Blob.
Ooh. Okay, different opinions on all 3. Okay, we'll come back to that in a little bit. Troll, what do you think about Floralisk?
I think it's the best pick for any tank build you want. He's probably the best for stuff like Pit Brawler or Zen Monk or any type of warrior. You can do really stupid stuff like beat the whole game while naked while being a Zen Monk or a Pit Brawler, and the heal he gets from his species special is huge, so you can all be a cleric and heal literally all of your health. And about the axe weakness, the first Grand Champion does use axes, and he does a lot of damage because he's a Cycladian barbarian. So that kind of sucks, but you can just out level him and beat him easily. My personal favorite race, although he's pretty much all defense and no offense.
Can you say the last part? Sorry. All defense and no offense.
He has all these bonuses like vitality, he heals himself, but he doesn't really have the race itself doesn't have any passes that make him hit harder or anything like that.
But yeah, you do agree with Nick that he is in. Well, I mean, you did say that he was your pick as being the best race out of all of them, right?
Uh, maybe I made my personal favorite the
Okay,
best
no worries, no worries. I should have
best of all of them. Best of all of them might be Cycladian or maybe Glamourzon.
Do you
Say
agree?
Cycladian.
Do you agree with Nick that Floralisk should be S tier?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I do too. I actually have. I don't think I've played him much. I would probably have put it in A tier, but I don't disagree that it can be S tier as well. As you guys mentioned, it's a basically a lot of most of its qualities are like health and defensive qualities, but they're very good, and it's an extremely strong unit, especially in early game. In early game, you get two bonus vitality, which is more health, and you get even more health with the 30% increase of your total health. The disadvantage of being like the axe being taking more damage to axes kind of does suck, but again, it's a situational, so it doesn't hugely matter, and its special ability is very good because it is such a health dependent race. It does run very well with the priest and knight classes, which are basically tanky builds with lots of HP usually, and this runs extremely well, probably one of the best fits for them. And so regaining 80% of your total health over 4 turns is extremely useful. And you also cleanse we cleanse one random negative status. So yeah, I do agree with that. Yeah, S tier seems good. I could put it in A, but S tier seems. I agree with that. The next one, the Glamourzons. I would put them S tier. The Glamourzons are one of the best. Oh my god, are one of the best races in the game. They work best as warrior, but they could also work as a priest or knight as well. 2 bonus strength in the beginning, again, very useful. It's an aggressive build, but it also is a defensive build as well, because you start with an extra 30% total HP. This kind of has similarities, like so far it has the exact same things as, oh actually not exact, one of the same things as the Floralisk, which is 30% extra HP. The 5%, it's completely, if when it's 5%, I don't even look at it, by the way. It's just so minuscule. But yeah, I mean, that's cool, I guess. Oh, actually, during the day. Okay, see, that's way better than some specific weather condition. So that's still good. When you fight during the day, it's 5% more damage. So that's something, I guess. The sonic vulnerability, you take an extra 10% from sonic attacks. Yeah, that is kind of bad, but there aren't that many Sonic champions. The ones that are very dangerous, granted, but still, 10% is not that much. And the special ability is wildly insane. You throw your enemy and you destroy up to 3 pieces of their armor. And in this game, having armor, the armor can be enchanted, and it can give you special abilities and advantages. And when you destroy that armor, they disappear if they're connected to the armor. And this is a very useful one. First, you throw them away, so you make distance between them if you need it, and then you destroy 3 pieces of their armor. And yeah, I think this is overall one of the best races to play as a warrior, especially. It's very good, very consistent. It doesn't really have any noticeable disadvantages other than the 10% damage from sonic attacks, but everything else in it, it's very consistent and useful for a warrior class or even a knight class, and for this build. So I would rate it S tier. I don't know if I'd rate it higher than the Cycladian, but S tier for me. Troll?
I too would rate it lower than the Cycladian, but higher than the Floralisk. What should be mentioned about the species special is that if they have no armor at all and you throw them and it does damage, it has a 60% chance of doing damage. It will instead do 33% of their health, which is quite a lot. And well, you said most of everything else. I don't really disagree with anything.
Yeah, sorry about that. I maybe I should leave some of the stuff for you guys to mention. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I actually did not know about that. If you throw them without armor, you said 33% damage to the overall health.
About that much, yeah.
Oh, okay, nice. I didn't know that. Nick.
Well, as there is obvious, when looking at the Glamourzon, it is just a great class. There's just so much to it, and yeah, comparing it with the Cycladian, that 30% damage is nice, but you don't get it while fighting the Starbound Gladiator. While the ability here, where you can throw your enemy and instantly destroy 3 pieces of their armor, that's of course really powerful. And knowing the Starbound has a lot of armor, that will really help. Also with Antares and other very strong bosses. This is just overall a great race that I really never used, but should have, because it's just so amazing. Kind of forgot how good it was. Also makes me kind of doubt about my decision for the best race. But I'm still gonna try and make a good argument for the Sagan Blob, but that will come later. But for now, I would say S tier. Yeah, and I would put it above Cycladian because that last ability is so great, and health is also amazing, strength is amazing. There's just more you get out of it, I think.
Yeah, that's a fair argument, honestly. Yeah. Again, I'm gonna have to. So it's basically me and Troll Project agree that it's between Cycladian and Floralisk, and Nick thinks it's above Cycladian, which also, I mean, honestly, it's a fair argument. I um I wouldn't. I'd say they don't need to be directly, because this isn't like a ranking list. Number one, number two. It's a tier list, so they are in the same tier and they're almost as good as each other. But you can make arguments that either one is better than the other, depending on the situation and fight you're in. I would say we can leave it like this for now. It's a very fun race to play with. It is the first race that I played with that finished the game, and it's very fun, especially the special ability when you pick up your enemies and throw them. It's a very fun one, very strong race. And moving on, Nick, do you want to start with the golems?
Yeah, sure. Let's have a look at the golems. So they start with 2 defense, which is great for a knight build. We see a damage reduction and resistance versus necrotic attacks, which is amazing. I hate getting hit with necrotic attacks. Who doesn't? And Cavern Dweller, bonus 10% hit chance when fighting underground. Great for fighting champions in dungeons. Lightning vulnerable, you take an extra 10% damage from lightning attacks, which is not so great. We kind of see that appear very often, lightning attacks, as well as enchanted weapons and spells. So that's a bummer. And yeah, the Rock of Ages allows you to fully heal and be immune for a bit. Well, this is a very unique one because the Rock of Ages ability, well, it's kind of RNG because what is your opponent going to do? The AI, what is that AI going to do in those 4 turns? Aside from that, it's great if you have a lot of stamina and a lot of health because that will ensure you heal up during that time. But it's basically the same as like a one-time full heal almost, and having your opponent confused for 4 turns. So you never know where they're gonna stand. So this is a strange one. Where would I put it? I think I would put it at B tier because I see where you could use it, but there are definitely better classes to use than this one. But if you were to do like a random race challenge, this one wouldn't be the worst to fall upon. So I would go B tier, and I think this class works best with a knight build or a priest build, maybe warrior build, but yeah, I'm going to say B tier or high C tier.
Okay, we have different opinions on that, but I will let Troll Project speak before me.
Yeah, so the necrotic damage resistance is not, it's pretty situational, but there's 2 champions, one of which you'll have to fight with just spam necrotic attacks non-stop, so it just makes them a lot easier to beat. From the 2 bonus defenses, pretty does a lot for like the first up until the first champion if you don't plan to level up defense at all, no matter what build you're running. And the species special is useful for high defense builds where you want to avoid sleeping at all costs because sleeping massively increases your opponent's chance to hit you. But if you use this ability, he won't be able to get that extra hit chance at least one time. And I guess it could be used to replenish your massive essence bar as a mage early game. I'm not saying you should go play as a mage golem, but you can do it. And the 10% extra lightning damage isn't really enough to matter, so that's kind of irrelevant. I do agree with B tier.
Okay, that is interesting. So I personally, for me personally, it's A tier, but I can see why it's also B tier for you guys, and I'll tell you why it's A tier for me. Is mainly, and this might sound a bit biased, it's mainly because of the natural 75% damage reduction in resistance versus necrotic attacks, and there is in the late game actually two or at least two, maybe three or even four very important and high level bosses that you face that use necrotic attacks, and they can be very deadly. One of them being the Kaleidoscope, which is one of the last, I think, the 9th Grand Arena Champion, which is basically a skeleton who uses necrotic attacks, and the main one of arguably the hardest boss of the game, Antares, the 8th underground boss. And this class, although it is more situational, more defensive, and more catered towards defense against necrotics, it is pretty much made if you want to fight Antares. If you want to defeat Antares in the higher difficulties, this is the one of the best races against him. On theory, I actually haven't played with this race against him. I was thinking about it, but I agree with you guys that it doesn't really have anything super big otherwise going for it. So we'll leave it at B tier. It does start out with 2 bonus defense, which is good for the early game. But a lot of the things that it has aren't super helpful overall for the run if you're doing a run with the golems. Other than it being extremely resistant against enemies like Antares and other like Kaleidoscope, Antares, and even Emperor Cygnus actually, because I think he also does necrotic attacks or something like that. So other than it being very helpful against those things, it doesn't have too much things going on for it. The morph is interesting actually, and it's very annoying having played against other golems. Basically, you become like you become invincible towards anything. Like when you use this skill, and it's only once per duel, but you basically become a boulder, and no attack can damage you. Nothing happens to you, and you heal almost all of your damage. And during that time, your opponent just I'm not sure how the AI reacts. He either does attacks or just waits. But yeah, it's definitely a bit of a more situational build rather than a certain type of strength that it has. So we can leave it at B tier. Next one is the Gunterians.
Okay.
Does anybody else want to start with him, or?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Troll.
Again, if you want to go for a wizard, I'm not saying you should, but this is the best race to do it because their unique ability, Ancestral Warcry, demoralizes the enemy, which prevents them from using any skills at all. And if you combine this with Frost, you basically force them to sleep, which will which will make hitting them a lot easier. The 2 bonus attack is useful for any build, so don't feel forced to play wizard with this one. And yeah, not much else to say. He's good at everything except tanking, but I wouldn't put him above Cycladian. He's probably high A tier, but he doesn't do as much damage. That's the thing.
Okay, high A tier. I was actually Nick. Do you want to go?
You can go.
Okay. I'm actually not sure how I feel about this one. I'm not sure if I've played with him. I don't think I've played with him in Immortals. But now, Troll Project made some really good points, and I hadn't thought about the fact that you could use this as a wizard. Because I always used to think that I've played as a wizard class, and I went with Eldor Hathian. But I can actually see that this might even be, this is probably a better choice. The 2 bonus attack is extremely helpful, as Troll Project said, with any race and class at any time, because you need a lot of attack in this game in order to be able to consistently land attacks on your opponents. And especially for the early game, the bonus stats are very important for early game, and this one is very helpful. You're not affected by freeze weather conditions, which is also good. The hit chance 10% is, I don't even talk about that one. The 5% is also not really, is even less relevant. But the Ancestral Warcry is an interesting special one-time skill for this race, because it's a sonic attack, so it's like a sound attack. It's not a physical attack. But it does help as a combo, as Troll Project said, with being a mage and demoralizing the opponent. So, yeah, I mean, I would personally say I'd more say this is like B tier, in my opinion. But let's hear what Nick has to say about it.
Well, I was contemplating this race for a moment, and I see where it has its uses. I was also thinking it would work with Rogue as well, because there are certain bosses in the beginning that can really easily catch up to you using the lunge of lions, or whatever it's called, the skill that makes you do an enormous lunge with an enormous jump to it. You move very far, even if you don't have a lot of agility. And I struggle with this ability at the second regional arena champion at Willard's. Was it Willard's Sound?
Yeah, the son of Wolfgang. I forgot. Atlas, Sir Atlas. Yeah, he's
Atlas. Yeah, Atlas. Yeah, and that's Willard's Sound, right? Oh, Shackleford, of course. Yeah, that's where Baron Wolfgang is from. Anyway, embarrassing. Yeah, so against Atlas, I struggle with the launch attack and the first 2 Grand Champions as well, which have that launch attack as well. The Cycladian guy, the captain, and Spartacus. And I see that if you know that a certain amount of turns has passed after he did that launch attack, you could use that Ancestral Warcry to delay the launch even further, which would be very helpful in rogue builds. But another thing I want to mention is, does the Grand Champion Arena count as a desert?
I don't think it does. I think I think the arena, the Grand Arena is it doesn't. It's like a neutral ground. It doesn't have any weather. It doesn't have night. It doesn't have any like mountain or desert or anything like that. I don't think it is.
Well, looking at this class, though, however, I do notice that it has one notable ability, and we have talked about classes that have multiple notable abilities. And Kennedy, could you go to the tier list for a second, please?
Oh yeah, sorry.
And if we look at, for example, the Golem has two notable abilities, while the Gunterian only has one, and it's an amazing one. But do I personally think that he's better than the Golem? I personally don't think so. I'm gonna do a hot take and say put him at C tier
Yeah.
because I don't think he is as great as the Golem. He has only one ability, and then it's kind of it for him. He doesn't have as much utility as the Golem and the other races we've ranked higher than them. Maybe that we move him to B when we've ranked the rest of the races, but as I see it now, I would put him at C tier. C tier.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, but since we're all complete, so basically Troll Project thinks he's A tier, I think he's B tier, you think it's C tier. I think we can do the average one for now. We can leave him in low B tier. I don't. Yeah, it's more situational and not that.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
That's like the fun of this tier list, you know. We have different opinions. We place it at different spots, and we have different opinions about the spots. But we do the middle ground for all the opinions.
We try to, and you actually mentioned a very good point that when we're doing the tier list, it's also very important to note where we've put the other ones at. So, for example, when you made the comparison between the Gunterians and the Golems. And that's a very good point that, you know, is the Gunterian better than the Golem in this example, especially when it's almost this situational and it has even less advantages or not as good. But yeah, I think this works for now, and later we will come to revision if something needs revisioning. But for now, let's keep moving. And
I do have one more thing to mention though about the Gunterian, and that is that I was thinking. Troll said he's probably the best for a wizard build, but he also mentioned about the golems that when you have a ton of essence or stamina, whatever you want to call it, you can just sleep and get all of it back. And I don't know how powerful stamina potions are at the end stage of the game. I've never really done like a proper wizard build, like I did Spellblade, but not like with the elements and stuff and the spells. But that could also be very useful. So thinking about it, Golem versus Gunterian both could be very great for wizard builds.
Yeah, that's a fair point, actually. Yeah, you could. It's kind of weird how the balance of the game has shifted, because the Eldor Hathians were clearly made to be the go-to wizards in this game, but there's like other classes, other races that do the same thing or even better in some instances, like Troll mentioned with the Gunterians, or even the golems using their natural reduction and defensiveness while being a magician. So yeah, that's an interesting thing to notice. But yeah, moving on. The Hallians. Let me see. Did I say it right? The Hallians. Okay, let me start with the Hallians. I did my most recent run on Sword and Sandals Immortals was as a Hallian archer, like a few months ago, 2 or 3 months ago or something, and it was an interesting run. I actually didn't complete the game. I didn't beat the Starbound Gladiator because I just stopped bothering. But This race is pretty much kind of a. Sorry, hold on. What's the word? It's like a one-trick pony, as they say. Basically, it excels at being an archer or basically any rogue class. Sorry, it's not. What's the whole class code? It's not. Is it archer?
Oh,
Sorry, what?
the class is called Rogue and the subclass
Okay.
is called Archer.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah. So this race, I feel like it's made for the rogue class, and it works the best with it. And it's one of the only classes that it works with. So the two bonus agility, having more agility is always good. It gives you more movement and more damage if you're using a bow. So that's good. 10% chance when fighting in forests. Okay, that's meh. The other one is also the 5% penalty to hit chance in urban. I've never quite understood what urban areas means. Is it like towns? Or I'm not even sure.
One
I think
example
so.
is Vator or
Okay, so like yeah, like okay. Not like when you go to deserts and forests, but like when you
oh
go
no
to
no no.
towns. Yeah, okay. It is kind of what I thought. Okay, and now its special ability, which it can be used once per duel, is extremely good if you are playing as a rogue class. Actually, it can be useful in other situations as well, but you basically leap away from your enemy and add 10 to your agility for 5 turns. Basically, if you're at face hug distance and you're low health or you're in trouble or you want to move away from the opponent, this is a very good um, ability to use. You leap very far away, and I think it also depends. Like if you have more agility and more movement, you leap even further away. But I'm not entirely sure on that. And
Correct.
you, sorry, what?
Yeah, it does scale with agility. The
Yeah.
more agility you have,
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, the more agility you have, the more movement you have, you go even further, which is always good. And you gain a lot. You and hold on, you add 10 to your agility for 5 turns, which is also pretty decent. Um, so that's a very good skill. Now, in terms of and again, this class works. Sorry, this race works best for the archer subclass of the rogue. So the class is the rogue, and one of the 4 subclasses is archer, and this is what works best. If you want to play an archer in this game, use a bow. This is the go-to class that you use because it's kind of made for that. And you can use it you could use it as a melee build, I guess, as a melee build, but it's not going to be as useful as if you're an archer. And where would I rank this? It's kind of a tough rank for me because it kind of excels in the one thing it does, but at the same time it does only one thing. I don't know. I feel like B tier maybe. Being an archer it could be fun, but also it is a bit hard in the early game before you start getting good bows, and you kind of have to run away from the opponent a lot. Although this class does help with it, I'm just gonna leave it at low B tier for now, and I'll let you guys talk about it as well. Nick?
Okay. The Hallian. Well, just like you, Kalinik, I was also playing Rogue Build recently, also a few weeks ago. And on Hellscape, I got to Archon, and now I can bother for a bit because just that defense, man. How do you get past
Oh,
that unless
I
you just
I
go
had a
into
problem.
attack?
Sorry, I had a problem with that as well. And the way I beat the Archon, is, for anybody who doesn't know, he is the 12th and last Grand Arena champion that you have to defeat if you want to progress in the game. And he is he's like the best archer in the game. And the way I beat him was I used the sword and I just chased him, and that's how I didn't even use the archer the build that this was made for, because it doesn't work. He and just like you, I was playing on Hellscape. Maybe he's easier on the other difficulties, but I was playing on Hellscape, which is the hardest difficulty, and for me he was impossible to beat with my archer. I'm not the best player of the game, of course, but for me it was way easier to grab a sword, enchant it with, I think I enchanted with freeze, so he stops moving, and that's how I killed him, the Archon. I would suggest you do that, but sorry, continue.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as well, but it would kind of destroy the point of an archer, so I was trying to figure out how to do it, legit. But it does look like when I will return to that build, it needs to be done that way. Or you need to pick another race and go full attack, because you just need that hit chance.
Well, I mean, you're still gonna, if you beat the game, it's still legit. You beat it with an archer. It's just with different champions, you have to adapt to different things. With this one, I don't know I think Troll Project defeated him he's gonna be very interesting to hear about this race, because I think Troll Project has defeated the Archon as an archer on Hellscape, but it's a very hard thing to do, and I just can't be bothered with doing that if it's even possible. And I'm not gonna interrupt you anymore. Sorry, go ahead.
But no problem. We're of course all passionate about this game, but let's not go on another tangent. Let's go back to the Hallian as a race itself. And I agree fully with Kalanick. It's a one-trick pony. It's good for archers on the higher difficulties. On the higher difficulties, it's almost necessary to have that extra agility, especially when you have an archer build, because that agility will not just grant you more damage, but will also grant you more hit chance towards your bow. But that's kind of it, to be honest, because when I look at the rest of their abilities, it's not really very notable. It's just agility, more agility, and the space Fleet Foot gives you between you and your enemy is also nice. But yeah, the bonus agility isn't really going to help you much. Like maybe if you need to regen your essence or something, or health, and want to get away for a bit, that extra agility could come in handy. But there are just many more better races to use for other builds. So if this game was archer only, of course this would be an S tier, no questions asked. But I think it belongs in the C tier.
I actually kind of changed my mind. I think also in the grand scale of things, especially compared to the other races, it probably belongs to C tier. So yeah, Troll.
So I agree with the C tier placing in that one bug where if the enemy gladiator is kind of, you and the enemy gladiator are really close to each other and you try to walk backwards, you end up not walking backwards because the game thinks you're trying to walk through him and he just pushes you. The same thing happens with the Hallian species special. So you're better off just jumping away if you want to make distance and have enough agility.
I totally forgot about that.
I was gonna talk about that, and I forgot as well. Yeah, it's not actually 100%. The ability is very good, but it's not actually 100% guaranteed. Sometimes it just doesn't work. Yeah, go ahead.
And about the Archon, I was an archer, but I wasn't even a Hallian. I was undead. Not that matters. I could be any race and still beat him as an archer. The main thing was that I had so much attack and I was max level when he is 6 levels below max level. And by archery, I mean I just smacked him with the bow itself most of the time and stunned him when he was away, while boosting him so he runs towards me and can't shoot me. It's very, very tedious, but not as tedious as sinking him with a poison dagger for like 300 turns or so until he finally decides to give up.
Yeah, you were the one who took 300 turns to defeat him, right?
Yeah, I think I was trying to do Barbarian Archer or something like that.
300 turns for anybody who doesn't know is an extremely big amount. The typical duo or fight in this game takes, I don't know, 10, 20, 30, let's say 40, up to like 40 turns or something. Yeah, not even. And 300 is
Sure.
just like 10 times more. So you agree it
Or-
would be C tier?
Yeah, yeah. 40 turns is what it took against the Archon as a quote-unquote archer, and that felt like forever as well.
Yeah. Um, let's move on. And while you're at it, Troll, do you want to talk? Do you want to start with the humans?
Yeah, they're basically Gunterian but more defensive. The stamina is useful for every build. In my opinion, the species special is better than the what was it, Craggites, because it boosts your spirit even more. And if you're a bard and you use the human spirit at the beginning of the fight, you'll get instantly buffed because it bards get 30% more spirit whenever they get inspired. And there isn't much else to say about humans. They're good with everything. A more defensive version of the Gunterian. I put them slightly above the Golem at B tier.
Sorry, can you say that again? You'd put them in B tier above Golem?
Yeah.
Okay. Neat.
Actually,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
below
I'm sorry, go ahead.
actually below Gunterian, now that I think about it, I think that the Gunterian's ability is way too good.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to say about them?
Now, it says it cleanses all negative effects, but in reality, it only cleanses one. Same goes with the Craggite. That's
Really? Huh.
the tooltip is wrong.
Oh, are you sure? Huh. That's a glitch in the game then, because it should cleanse all, but yeah. I actually haven't played with as a human in this game. Um, Nick, do you wanna go?
Sure, I'll elaborate. I basically agree with Troll Project, and in that it is a better version than the Craggite, though Vitality is also useful, but not really unless you're going for it. Like we discussed in previous videos, that you could get by with minimal Vitality. And I am thinking about the Craggite's bonus effect, which is to knock the enemy back. If I remember well, that knockback isn't much, but I guess it is helpful in some situations, like to avoid that hugging bug we talked about during the discussion of the Hallian. But yeah, you get 20% extra spirit with the human ability. So I would say, hold on, where did we?
It's
rank
it's
the
50%.
Red
But yeah.
Guide? Yeah, it's 50% instead of 30%. Could you go back to the tier list for a second?
Oh,
Kevin?
yep. Sorry. Go ahead.
So I would still rank it at C tier, but at the top of C tier.
I actually would rank it exactly there as well. It's the way I describe it and the way I see this species, this race is they're not bad at anything, but they're not also exceedingly good at anything. They're kind of just it's
Exactly.
just human is in it. They are very in between everything. I feel like you're not really gonna suffer any major disadvantages playing as them. but you're also not gonna get anything huge out of them. Stamina as the starting stat for early game is not super good. Stamina is also good to have, is always good to have in the game, but it's not the best starting stat to help you with. And they have a lot of these 5-10% irrelevant chances for, you know, hills and underground and urban areas. But yeah, the spirit increase is actually pretty good. But I mean, Stroll said it cleanses only one negative status effect instead of all, which is unfortunate if that's the case. I don't know. I haven't played them. In relation to the Craggite, I think they're. I mean, I don't know. I think they're. I'm not sure, but actually, what I was gonna say is the knockback. Usually, for knockback, I think it depends how much strength your character has. So the more strength you have, the more knockback there is, I think. But it also depends on how much strength the opponent has, because that's how much, and vitality as well, because that goes into the resistance of the knockback thing. But yeah, with the humans, yeah, nothing overtly impressive or negative about them. They're just kind of there. So I'd put them in high C.
Yeah, they're just basically a better Craggite, but that you've said it all. Because if you look at the Gunterian and the Golem, they have better starting stats and just better abilities overall. And I don't think the human race is on par with both of them. So
Yeah.
top C tier is the best I could give it.
Okay, moving on. We have the.
And I see something.
Oh yes, sorry. Go ahead.
You're right about pushing distance being bigger the more strength you have. I'm not sure if that actually applies to the Craggite's ability or if it is a fixed distance it knocks enemies back for. And the more defense an enemy has, the less you're able to push them. Like, it will push them less, not strength. Defense is the stat that makes you resistant to being pushed.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and there's a lot of factors into it, and I'm also not sure. I'm not sure if it applies. I've never been sure if stats and the way the normal attacks and defenses work apply to the special abilities of any of the races, because their special one-time use abilities are kind of different than the rest of like the spells and attacks that you do in the game. I feel like they work in they're like, I mean, the code itself, the way they're written into the game. But so I'm not 100% sure if it works for that or not. I feel like it does, but I'm not entirely certain. So yeah. Okay. So the next one, are those the Klergish? Klergish. Okay. Klergish. They're an interesting race. I've never really played with them. They are. Okay, let's go over them. 2 bonus attack, that's always good, very useful for early game. 10% in fighting in mountains, 10% in swamps. Swamps are very rare in this game, I think, but and you take an extra 10% from fire attacks. The 10% isn't a lot, but fire attacks are somewhat frequent, so that's a bit unfortunate for this race. Their special attack, the Hog attack, shamanistic melee attack that transfers 25% of your enemy's health to you. Huh? That's I wasn't even familiar with their special attack. I'm not sure how to feel about this and what to rank this as. It's nothing. It doesn't really. I don't see any other than the 2 bonus attack, obviously. I don't see anything special or very good about them. So I haven't played against them. Now I remember one of the hard champions of Sword and Sandals Immortals is the grandson of Stellonius, and for all those fans out there of the Stellonius family, I'm one of them. I've always loved seeing them. It is hilarious to keep seeing the grandsons, and in the next game it's gonna be the great grandson. But that one was a hard champion, but the race itself is not very good. I think I just don't see anything very good with it. The special attack is just yeah. I'll just honestly, I think it's like low C tier, might even be high D tier. I'll just put it in very low C tier. I'm not sure though. We'll come back to it after you guys have said your word about it as well. Nick, do you want to go?
Well, I agree with you that there's nothing notable about this race. The Hawk Hack, you do damage and you gain a little health. Well, nice, but that's kind of it. But I think this is the worst race we've seen so far. And the one we have at the bottom now at D tier is Fae. And while I see some use for Fae, you get extra elemental damage for a few rounds, which can be really nice, especially late game, to really hammer down on your opponent. But I don't even think the Klergish come close to the Fae. I would even put it in E tier if this was on the tier list, but it's not. So I'm just gonna put it on low D tier.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah, I agree with that. I'm fine with that as well. Yeah, it's just, yeah. Do you have anything else you want to say about it, or do we transfer to Troll Project?
One thing more though is it's interesting that indeed grandson of Stylonius is a formidable opponent, and he also appears in Swords and Sandals 3, believe it or not. But the lore is he got assassinated by the evil ninja Redux, and that's why we see him in Swords and Sandals 3 instead of the great grandson. But it's cool to see him come back.
Actually, I think you have that wrong. There are two grandsons, so the other one is this one's brother. I think that's how the lore actually goes. So basically, the evil and Swords and Sandals 3 OG is the lore is very iffy on that because it's like an old game and it doesn't have a Redux yet. But according to the lore and the way I see it is the evil ninja assassinates one of the grandsons of Stylonius, and this one, the one we see in, well, not this one specific, the one we see in Immortals is his brother, actually, because I think it also mentions it in his bio that his brother was, or one of his brothers was killed. So I might be wrong, but I think that's what actually happened.
Could be, but the champion in Swords and Sandals 3 is called Evil Ninja Redux.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
That's the name.
Yeah, but I meant the game itself is not. Yeah, anyway, we're going off track. Sorry.
Yeah. But that was just a cool little fact.
Yep. But yeah, the grandson of Stylonius in Immortals is a very formidable champion, but it's not because of his species.
This race.
Yeah, it's not because of this race. It's just he's a very good champion. Anyway, sorry, we're going off track again. Troll, what do you think about the Klergish?
I'd say he's an inferior Gunterian simply because of the two bonus attack and how their special skills are pretty similar, with the cleric special still doing a bit more damage, but the extra fire damage he takes is bad because the final boss uses fire attacks, Antares uses fire attacks, almost every mage uses fire attacks. The thing about Hawk Hack is that it can miss, like you can be out of range of your opponent and you won't get the chance to hit them at all. Because the way it works is you use it, you jump a distance forward, which the distance you jump, I think, is based on how much agility you have. And if you're too far away, it will just do nothing at all. So I would put him in bottom C tier. He's not great, but he's not that bad either.
Yeah, you can make an argument for that, but I think we leave him in D tier for now because both me and Nick think that Nick would rate him even lower if he could. But yeah, I
The
think
fire vulnerability also, I wanted to mention that, but forgot that, like with the Starbound Gladiator and his fire attacks,
Oh
that
yeah,
also doesn't help.
yeah, and Antares also has. So Antares has meteor shower. Is that technically a fire attack?
Starbound Gladiator has meteor shower. I'm not entirely sure what type of damage that does. Mainly, typically with all these, both these species special and unique attacks, they do damage that ignores all defenses the enemy has. So even if it
Mm,
says
yeah.
it does light, even if it says it does necrot, for example, Eldor Hathian's power, if used against the Golem, it will still do the full damage. It won't be reduced by 75%, I think.
Yeah, yeah. As I mentioned earlier, the special attacks seem to have their own different coding and way they work in the game. They kind of ignore a lot of the other typical stats and natural defenses against them. Um, so yeah, hold on, where were we? Oh shit. Oh, Klergish. Yeah. So yeah, I mean yeah. Also yeah, when if you're playing Klergish and you fight the Starbound Gladiator, you're gonna have an even tougher time because 10% damage from fire. 10% is not like that much, but it's still he uses them frequently, the Starbound Gladiator. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. Um, okay, moving on. Ooh, Sagan Blob. Okay, so I haven't played Sagan Blob, so one of you guys should start with this. I think you both have played it, and you have way more knowledge about it than I have.
Well, if
Thank you.
you can start, Troll. You can start.
Okay, thank you. So the fire resistance is really good because fire has to be the most common elemental damage type in the game. So that makes many fights easier. The two bonus charisma guide you towards Bard, but you can build him pretty much anything that isn't a tank build and it will kind of work. His special ability is more of a countermeasure against Yerens, we'll see why later, and barbarians because you can grow your limbs back if they get cut off. The healing is not as great because it's less than what the Floralisk can heal, so I'd say high C tier because of the fire resistance. There's not much else going for him.
High C tier. Okay. Nick.
Well, that's an interesting take on it. Well, I agree with the fire resistant ability that it really helps against many bosses and many opponents because fire attacks are very common. The squishy won't help you against Starbound because he uses a sword, obviously. Um, but I do think the bubble up ability is better than that of the Floralisk, the healing ability, because you have that 70% healing spread over 6 turns. And when you have a lot of health, then you have that more spread out. So you don't have to worry much about health for a little bit. And you can also use it more as a prevention ability. If you know you're going to take a lot of damage for a few rounds, it can already start healing you up, but it won't like go up to the max so that you don't like lose the ability's efficiency. And that's where it truly shines. And like Tro also said about fighting Yarens, when you lose a limb, it's basically game over. But with Sagan Blobs, you have another chance, and that's just great. And where I think they shine is I think they could also work really well as priest builds, but I think in the knight build they fit very well because you can just do this strategy of using it using the ability as a prevention to heal up, but at the same time just hammer down on your opponent. And it's just very helpful. And now that we have covered some other races, my opinion of it being the best has kind of changed. I'm was I was first up just a real big fan of the fire resistance it gives. That's just really helpful. And the bubble up ability is also very fine, very nice. But I'm gonna put it besides my bias and put it in A tier. I was gonna put it at the highest in S, but um, I'm gonna concede for A tier because it's still a very decent race, and it has two notable abilities that are just amazing.
Okay, that's an interesting take as well. Both very differing opinions, and while I personally haven't uh, played as a Sagan Blob, um, looking at them and basically the best classes that they work with, from my understanding, is the Bard, the Knight, and the Priest. And that means that they have a, they're versatile. They're not just like a one trick pony, and they have their uses. The two bonus charisma, yeah, more indicates towards the bard, the bard class and the full subclass, which is a subclass of the bard. Um, the natural 75% damage reduction and resistance versus fire attacks is extremely useful, as they seem to be the most frequent type of attack. However, on the downside, while I usually don't take into consideration the 5 and 10% advantages and disadvantages, because they're inconsistent, because basically they're way more situational than they are realistic to happen. However, taking 10% extra damage from swords is a big deal, since most of the enemies you will encounter and most of the champions use swords, including the last two bosses, Antares and the Starbound Gladiator, which means essentially in most of the fights, or in more fights than not, you'll be getting 10% extra damage from your enemies, at least their melee attacks. The Bubble Up special ability is an interesting one, and as I think Troll Project mentioned, it's a lesser, basically. Oh wait, no, it's the Golem. It's basically, wait, no, sorry, it is the Floralisk. It's basically a worse photosynthesis of the Floralisk, because the Floralisk regains 80% of their health in 4 turns, and the Sagan Blob regains 70% of their health over 6 turns, so less health in more turns. And I'm not exactly sure how I feel about this one. In the earlier stages of the game, when the Bard classes were extremely powerful, this will definitely be higher up. I feel like probably something in the middle ground, like a high B tier maybe. To be honest, in terms of it's very versatile, to be honest. So I can also agree that it could go to A tier, maybe low A tier, high B tier, in my opinion. But again, unfortunately, I'm not the best tiebreaker for this species because I haven't played it. But let's just leave it in. We can just leave it in A tier for now, and then we'll go back to it if later. And let's move on to the skeleton. Wait, the skeleton, the undead. The undead are. Does anybody else want to start with them?
You can go.
Hmm.
You can start if you want.
Sure. Yeah. They're a very interesting and powerful race, in my opinion. And let's just quickly gloss over their details. 2 bonus defense. That is good for early game. They're not gonna be as aggressive in the very early game. They're more defensive, but natural 75% damage reduction and resistance versus poison attacks. And poison attacks are also somewhat one of the more frequent type of attacks in this game, I feel like. And that's it. That is extremely good, an extremely good thing to have. You are brittle. Not the disadvantages are you're brittle and take 10% extra damage versus clubs. Though that is unfortunate. Clubs are not that frequent, especially in the later game, so that's not a huge worry for me. Creature of the Night. This is basically the same as the Cycladians. Oh, it's actually the exact same as the Cycladians. Okay, yeah. You do 30% more damage when fighting at night, which is extremely powerful, considering you can play the game so that you get this in almost every fight you're in, other than the Starbound Gladiator. You can even use it in the Antares fight. You just have to time going to the dungeon at the right time, but which is I've done that. And Grave Pact, their special ability, which is very powerful. You regain 10% of your total health and your essence at the cost of your spirit being broken. So it's actually there's a price to it. However, there are ways to avoid it from what I remember, but I just don't remember how exactly. One of you probably knows. But this is very good when let's say you had like 2,000 or 3,000 health or whatever, and you had bad luck, your opponent was very powerful. You use this and you regain most of your total health, and your essence as well, meaning your energy, your stamina, basically. At the cost of your spirit being broken, and that's kind of like your spirit being broken in this game in Immortals is you get like there's a pool of 4 or 5 different disadvantages or like different things you can get. You can either do half damage, your defense could be halved, you could not use spells, you could not use special items, stuff like that. This is once per battle, but I think it's a very good class overall. It's not the best one, but it definitely has more. It has 3 very good advantages, like the poison resistant, creature of the night, and Grave Pact. And so honestly, I would put it in high A tier. Might be even S tier, honestly, but I think I'll put it in high A tier for now, and I'll let you guys Troll, go ahead.
Yeah, the 2 bonus defense is nice for the early game. Poison isn't that frequent of a damage type, but when you get hit by it, it's usually pretty devastating. So the resistance is nice because when you're poisoned, you can't regenerate health at all. Clubs are not the most frequent weapon type. They're not rare either. The creature of the night again is amazing. About the special ability, again, the tooltip is slightly wrong. It regenerates 90% of all of your health and essence, and it also removes all buffs and debuffs you have on you at that time. And you can avoid being broken by being a bard class, battle poet subclass, which will, instead of breaking you, it will inspire you, giving you one of 5 different buffs, which is 100% hits and 100% crit chance, or take half damage and stuff like that. Supposedly, you should be able to avoid being broken by being a priest, because priests never have their spirit broken. They always stay calm or inspired. But I've never seen that actually work. Undead priests that use that ability get broken as well.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And another thing you don't see here is that priests will do 50% more damage against you because you're a skeleton. And you can try to avoid fighting priests all the time, but you will have to fight at least 4 of them, because out of 12 grand champions are priests, so that kind of sucks. And you can kind of cleanse the debuff that being broken will give you with the purification potion. But if you haven't hit your opponent many times in a row before that, you will just get broken again immediately. So that would be kind of pointless. So I agree with low A tier, right where he is probably.
Yeah, we could hold on. Yeah, those are actually some very good points, and it actually doesn't say because you said that he removes all negative effects. It doesn't say that in the Grave Pact, but I mean,
It's also positive.
sorry, what?
It removes all positive and negative effects when you
Oh,
use it.
okay, both. Okay, gotcha. Um, yeah, it does. I did forget that there's actually 4 different grand champions who are priest, so that kind of does suck. But yeah, Nick.
Well, a lot of points have already been made about the skeleton, but I would also say that indeed, priest having more damage against you and going through the grand champions will make this a lot more annoying. But since you can level up as much as you want outside of the grand champions up to the max level cap, of course, it shouldn't really be a problem because if you're struggling, you just got to keep leveling. But what I'm thinking of is comparing the skeleton towards comparing the skeleton with the golem, and yeah, having 4 turns to rest. Wouldn't that also fully like heal you up, or would that just be like half?
I think it. I don't know how much it heals you, but it heals you a lot.
Sleeping heals you, and the ability itself also heals you. So you'll basically get to full health and stamina and energy with the golem power.
Yeah, and what the golem doesn't have is the despair ability. You know, the despair debuff, and yeah, skeleton does also regen essence. And Golem also doesn't have the mage vulnerability, but he does have the lightning vulnerability, which does suck a lot. Um, what I'm basically pondering is the skeleton a worse or a better version of the golems, as their ability to fully heal up seems kind of similar, only the skeleton does it immediately and you have a chance at a terrible debuff. Like if you can't use potions for a while, but your character isn't built around potions anyway, you're kind of lucky. But if with the golem, you rest for 4 turns. Who knows what your opponent will do in 4 turns? Like maybe your golem is built to where it doesn't matter where your opponent stands, but when it does, it could lead you into a lot of trouble. But I almost want to say they are very similar. So I will say, looking at the tier list also, I would put them at B tier because they're very similar to the Golem.
Um, yeah, I could see that. Honestly, they're when you now that you mention it, their abilities are quite similar, but also very different at the same time, and they both have ups and downs to their special ability, which is not a lot of the species just do their thing and they don't have any repercussions. But since these abilities of the golem and the undead are very strong, they have some kind of a something to hinder them so that they're not completely overpowered. And it's a matter of picking your poison basically, because with the golem you become a boulder and for 4 turns you heal and your opponent can't do anything to you. but basically that incentivizes the opponent to have for these 4 turns they can use potions and they can use like other skills to prepare themselves to buff themselves for when the time comes to fight you, for when you wake up. Meanwhile, the skeleton, while you do regain most of your health and essence in 1 turn, it does get your spirit broken, and depending on what class you play and the situation, you might or might not be able to avoid being broken. But as Troll Project said, when your meter, your spirit meter or whatever it's called, is low, if you miss attacks, you're gonna get broken anyway, even if you don't initially get broken by this. So that's kind of unfortunate. I don't know. They maybe the rock golem is a bit on the more safer side, but you do give the opponent 4 turns where they can do anything. Well, I mean, they can't damage you, but they can prepare. They can drink potions, and normally drinking a potion would waste your turn, but when your opponent is taking 4 turns to heal without being able to be hit, then you're good to go. So I don't know. I would say we can leave it at low A tier for now. Me and Troll think A tier is okay. Nick thinks high B tier, or I mean B tier. Again, we can come back to that later. I mean, honestly, even putting it in B tier wouldn't be. I wouldn't mind.
I want to mention one more thing, and you said that enemies and opponents can prepare. The thing is, you're fighting against AI.
Yeah.
So the chance is also great, or even greater, I think, actually, that they use skills that they shouldn't use at that time.
Yep.
So they could also waste their turns.
True.
So that, let's say, the Starbound Gladiator throws Meteor Rain or like the strong fire attack on you.
Yep.
And it was your final round of sleeping, of resting. Well, he can't use that for a while anymore. And just like the Gunterian, like the Ancestral Warcry, it can be used to prevent your opponent from doing a certain attack on you and delay it even further.
Yep, that's true. That's a very good point. When you play when you play single player, you play against AI. So, yeah.
And we're doing this for single player, not multiplayer.
I mean, even if I guess we should have started with that. But I mean, multiplayer is dead. But I mean, yeah, for multiplayer, the rock golem would be more dangerous because the opponent's gonna be able to prepare. But yeah, I mean,
one more thing about the golem.
Yeah.
That most of the time the enemies in single player will just attack you as if you're not invulnerable.
Okay.
And for some reason, because they land in multiple hits in a row, that will make their spirit go up, which will lead to them being buffed eventually. It's usually not the end of the world, but it's going to happen.
Oh, I had not thought about that. So basically, when you're a boulder and your enemy swings at you, it considers that a hit for them and it raises their meter.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That makes it even more potentially dangerous, especially in the later game.
But isn't there also a bug where Grand Champions automatically get inspired or start inspired?
No idea. Anyway,
because I've seen that before while playing. They got inspired, and then their ability, like their buff, runs out, and they immediately get another one. They just stay inspired.
That's if immediately after they lose their buff from being inspired, they manage to get a hit on you again, they will get inspired again immediately. The same applies to you. If they miss an attack or two after losing their inspired buff, they will not get inspired fully immediately.
Anyway, we're going a bit off track here. Let's
Still about the golem,
yeah.
but it's important in relation to the skeleton which one
that's
is
true.
actually better or not.
That
But
that is true. They're
we
very
said our
similar.
dues, I think. Let's continue on.
They are. It is true. It is a good point. They are very similar. It's just I think there's too many factors for us to be able to say one is better than the other because it depends on the situation. It depends who
And
you're
RNG.
playing against. And RNG, yeah, and what the AI will do. So yeah. Moving on, the Yeren, aka Chewbacca. Or as he's called here, Kib. They're a very interesting species. One of the most unique ones, I'd say. 2 bonus strength starting, that's very good for early game. Massive size grants 30% extra total health, very good as well. So basically a very tanky, strong build right off the bat. Freezing weather conditions do not affect you at all. That's cool, I guess. Yeah. I mean, yeah, no downsides there. It's cool. Not a huge deal either way, but yeah. Now the disadvantage, which is a pretty big one, and this is one of only, I believe, two species that has that, is your big head. Your head is too big to wear a helmet, so you can't wear a helmet at all, which could be detrimental sometimes, or oftentimes even, because in this game, whenever if you get hit in a body part that doesn't have armor, you get critical hit, and that can be very bad. They can end you right there on the spot sometimes, rarely, but still. And it means you have less armor to equip, to enchant with, to forge with items that you could use with talents or stats, which is also a drawback. But other than that, everything else about the Yeren is very powerful. Especially, see, this is now his limb from limb special ability is a violent melee attack with a chance to rip off random limbs from your enemy's body. And this is a once per battle situation ability. If it happens, you have basically won the fight, because if you rip off one of their arms, they don't have their weapon arm anymore, oftentimes, or their shield arm, and they can't even attack you or do damage, and the fight is won. However, there is a very low chance of this actually happening. I don't remember the exact chance. It's either I don't even think it's 20%. It might be less. I'm not sure, and it's a very good skill. It's just kind of not consistent, because and obviously if this was 100%, this would be an unstoppable SS plus tier class. So obviously it's not. And this works best with, warrior, knight. You can even work it with priest because of how much HP, how much more HP it has as well. I would put them. That's a tough one. The head thing is kind of sucks, but it's still, all the other things are still very good. So I think 8. Come on, oh, there it is. Okay, I think I'll put it in 8. Well, I think it's. I'm not sure, but I think it's 8 tier for now. Could be B, but I think it's 8 tier. Even though the disadvantage is pretty bad, all the advantages are actually maybe lower A tier, because the limb from limb attack is also not consistent. So if it does work, it's awesome, and it could work on champions. You could always try it, but it's just a very low chance. Might be even lower for champions, but I'll just put it in low A tier for now. And going over to you guys, Troll.
Yeah, I do agree that not having a helmet seriously sucks, especially on harder difficulties. People can just one-shot you if they happen to get you on the head. And the special ability is the biggest RNG shit show in the entire game. The hit chance is based on the level difference between you and your opponent and nothing else, being the same level as your opponent, has about a 20% chance of hitting them or so. And if you manage to cut something off, it will do 20% of their health. The thing is, you can chop a leg or their shield arm, and that won't do much besides increase your hit chance a bit. And if you chop their weapon arm off, which is like a 1 in 4 or 5 chance, provided the 1 in 5 chance that the attack actually hits, you have basically won. So if you're patient enough, you can win every fight like this, unless it's the final boss or unless the enemy is dual wielding for some reason. Even if you chop both arms off, you'll be the one feeling phantom pain, not them.
Would you, what would you rate it?
About there sounds right, maybe even below Golem or something.
Yeah, that's another thing that I hadn't thought about is it's basically a lot of its advantages are basically so 2 bonus strength and your massive size, 30% auto health. So when it has things like this that are similar to the Glamourzon, the Floralisk, you kind of compare it to them, and they have way better and more things going on for them than the Yeren does. So that's also another thing. Like the yeah. Where did it go? Oh. Okay, and Nick.
Well, there's a lot that you guys have already mentioned, and indeed, you can rush through the bosses using RNG and save scumming to get that RNG. But if you were to play it legit without save scumming, it's yeah, the chance of cutting an opponent's limb is really low. Plus, if you're not going for a health build and your enemy or opponent attacks your head, it's game over. So there's a lot of weak points, but not a lot of strength points unless you get lucky with RNG. So if you like playing with save scum, I would definitely say A tier because of the races we put up and the great warrior builds and knight builds that you can make to and priest builds even to beat the starbound and even on higher difficulties like the man at arms subclass, which combined with a certain talent gives you 80% physical damage resistance. That's just a lot more reliable and also good enough to beat the game on those higher difficulties. So you don't really need that RNG. So I would put it at B tier.
Yeah, honestly, after your guys' arguments, I do agree that it's not as impressive as I had actually thought. I mean, it's still pretty good, but yeah, like there's other species that have the 30% total health and bonus strength that do things way better and more things. So yeah, I think B tier, like around Golem or. But that's the thing. Would you rate it above Golem or not? That's another question. Probably not, right? It depends. It depends on the classes. But as you said, it's kind of like you have to. It will be better to have a health build, like a tank build, so that you can tank more damage, because you're always gonna have your head exposed, and that's never good. We can leave it like this for now. And going to the last.
Finally,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, what?
I wanted to say finally the last one.
Yeah, I've actually been very excited to to trash talk this one. I'm not even gonna. So I mean, I obviously I'm gonna explain myself, but yeah, I'm just instantly putting him in the lowest possible tier of the game because I feel like Oliver was just he was just like sitting in his desk contemplating making the races, and he was like, okay, can I make what race can I make this the shittiest one that has basically only mainly disadvantages and barely any advantages? And hey, here it is, the Haxxapods. This is actually the very first class that I started the game with, because like on my very first run of the game when I started, I was playing with a friend, talking with him on Skype, and he was like, hey, you should try this one, this looks cool. And we only chose it because it looked like, kind of like badass with the whole bug thing. But when you look at the whole its list of things that it has, and oh my god. Now, the 2 bonus agility is actually not bad, especially for early game. You get to run away more, get more movement. But that's about where the good things about this one stop, because Sonic it has natural 75% damage reduction and resistance versus Sonic attacks. Now this actually is very good for the very first champion, Mighty Charles, was it? Big Charles?
Huge charge, but whatever.
Sorry, what?
Huge charge, but whatever.
Oh yeah. So yeah, this one has a direct advantage versus the first champion, Huge Charles. But I mean, you're gonna beat him anyway. But yeah, sonic attacks, meaning sound attacks like guitars, screams, and stuff like that, they're not very frequent in this game. You will encounter some bards, but not any in the later game, so that doesn't come into huge help. And now here's where the even worse stuff happens. You're brittle and take 10% extra damage versus clubs. This is actually not very relevant because clubs are not very frequent, as we've mentioned before. So we can ignore this part, but again, the big head. This is the second and one of two species in this game that has this, the big head, along with the Yeren and Haxxapod. Your head is too big to wear a helmet, and again, the exact same issues as the Yeren. You have no armor, you can't enchant it, you get hit in the head, you're screwed. And this isn't even, at least the Yeren can use its health and tankiness to kind of make up for the fact that he can be hit in the head, but this one doesn't even have anything like that. Its parasitic bite, its special attack, which is called a parasitic bite, once per battle. You transfer all of your negative status effect to your enemy, which that's not too bad, but there's just, I haven't really ever found any big use for it. If you were, let's say for example, if you're losing your fight and you use this, it's just a wasted turn basically, in my opinion, because you're just gonna, yeah, it's just, I don't really have anything good to say about this class. I don't know, I might be biased. I just don't really find anything good about it, and I'll just leave it to you guys. Troll?
Yeah, this class is this race is an absolute pile of shit. First of all, the starting stat agility is misleading because you think you'd want to be an archer, but you can't use parasitic bite unless you're using a melee weapon. The sonic resistance isn't that great because one of the bard's default abilities, taunts, targets your head, which will always be exposed because you don't have a helmet. And most champions that are also bards have such an exorbitant amount of charisma that they'll just one-shot you anyway if you don't invest quite a few points into vitality if you're a Haxxapod. I would want to put him at the absolute lowest D tier, but unlike the Fae, his species special is actually kind of useful, so above Fae, Lord, and Klergish. And on an irrelevant note, Haxxapod is the only race which is which is always evil. Like, you can't spare anyone; you just kill everyone on sight. Which also means you can't be a paladin or Zen monk while also being this race.
Ooh, I hadn't thought about that. So you'd still put it D tier, above maybe above Fae?
Above Fae, but not higher than Klergish.
Okay, let's leave it there for now. Yeah, you mentioned even more disadvantages and its contradictions. Basically, your poisonous bite, you can't. So yeah, your bonus agility, uh, like it would help if you're an archer, but then you can't use your special ability because it only works if you have a melee weapon, which is unfortunate. I mean, you can use the skill that switches your weapons, but that's like an extra step. You're basically wasting 3 or 4 turns to do this one thing, because you have to switch to your sword, then you have to use this, then you have to switch back. So that's at least 3 turns. So yeah, it's just and especially even if you disregard all of its many disadvantages, inconsistencies, and just it being total shit, any other class is better than this one, pretty much. Yeah. Nick.
Well, I don't have much to add to what you said, Kalenik. They're not really useful for anything because there's also not really a lot of champions that are barred. There's a few regional ones, but grand champions.
There is
Do
one
we
or
even-
two. There is one or I think one for sure. The Eternal Pta. I don't, but it's not.
The Eternal Pita?
Yeah.
He's a priest.
Yeah, I don't remember him being a bard.
Oh wait, sorry. I'm sorry. You said a bard. I didn't hear you. My bad. Yeah. It's just.
I don't think there's a grand champion that's even a bard.
No.
Yeah.
No, so it's kind of useless. Even though this is my favorite race because it looks so fucking cool, man.
It looks
And
cool,
it's
and they have
enough-
interesting names.
Yeah. And it's a throwback to Swords and Sandals 4. But yeah, they're just shit.
Oh, okay,
Sadly.
how do you pronounce this? Did I say that right? Oliver, if you're watching this, let me know if I said that right. Hey, what's your name? I'm Ili. So yeah, I mean that's why I chose it when I started playing the game back when like I was brand new, so I wasn't really looking at this at all, and I had no idea that so I was just looking at this, and they do look cool. They have awesome designs. Like I mean the art for this game is so awesome. It's fucking awesome. But yeah, just in terms of viability and how good it is, it's just unfortunately just like it was at the bottom of the list of all the species, it was the last one. It's also the last, well, almost the last one in here. I could agree it has some. You could put it above Fae, but not higher than that.
I would disagree with that because with Fae, at least the ability helps when you want to be an all spellcaster, you know?
Honestly, that's also true.
At least I can think of something positive about
You
it.
can find
There is
some-
just nothing
yeah.
positive about
Yeah,
the
you-
Haxxapod.
that's
just
true.
nothing.
You can find some like positive thing to do. Like if someone put a gun in your head and you're like, okay, finish the game, play with Haxxapod, and you're like, okay, I'll play wizard, I guess. Yeah, I guess.
I remember something else.
Sorry, go ahead, Troll.
The parasitic bite also always poisons your opponent, even if you aren't poisoned yourself. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's. I mean,
They were also a much more appealing class before like many abilities and stuff came to the game because when it just released Swords and Sandals Immortals in early access, I believe Parasitic Bite wasn't a thing. And you could also play as a Holy Haxxapod if you wanted to. Like Holy Haxxapod, man.
Well, too bad you can't now.
No.
Honestly, I'd still put it. I'd still put it on the lowest one because while it does have like half a thing that, or half a thing that it can do better than the Fae. It just has so many disadvantages and incompatibilities, like not being able to be archer, bard, or priest. It's just too much, I think. I'll just leave it here. And with this, our list is concluded, but I thought of something else. Now that we've done the list, we can go ahead and go to each tier and like rank them. Like, let's say if we think Floralisk is goes before, and this is something quick we could do, like not in depth or anything, but. And let's start with the D tier. Do we agree with the order they are in now? I know one of you thinks that the Fae. I mean the I know Troll thinks the Haxxapod is better than the Fae, but other than that, do you agree with this?
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's 2-on-1 against Troll on the Haxxapod. So yeah, I think we can do it like that. Now, C tier. I would say Eldor Hathian is better than Craggite, but that's like so situational that I don't know. I feel like this is actually, honestly, I also agree with this. Do you guys agree?
I agree.
It's Eldor Hathian is better than Craggite as well.
I know, right? But then if we do this, does that mean the Hallian is better than the Eldor? Sorry, well, both the Eldor Hathian and the Craggite. That's the thing with Hallian. It's just like an archer, so it's kind of hard to judge it.
Yeah, it is.
I can. That's hard.
Put it between the two.
Put what between the two?
I would put Craggite the lowest, and then Hallian, and then Eldor Hathian. Like that.
Yeah, honestly, I kind of agree with this. Troll?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we can leave it there. And again, this is just, based on our opinions, and we're not trying to discourage anyone from playing something that they like. You could, especially in the easier difficulties, or if you're like a first time, you could definitely finish the game playing as a Haxxapod. It's just gonna be harder than anything, like every other thing is any other race. But you can do it. So B tier. This one is a kind of a tough one, but honestly, I think this also kind of works. We had a lot of talks and comebacks to the Golem because we would compare him to a lot of the other races. I think that's good. He's still better than the Yeren, I think, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Like with Yeren, for it to be good, yeah, you gotta save Scum.
Yeah, safe scumming is not really like I never. I mean, I've done it like a few times, but not like with Yeren. You'd have to do it constantly to make it work. So yeah. We had dividing opinions on the Sagan Blob as well. It's still like it could be a very every time I oftentimes when I fought Sagan Blobs as like random gladiators, especially and even like champions, they were always annoying and hard and tedious to fight because they would often regenerate. It would take me a while to kill them. Like I'd almost have killed them and then they would regenerate. So.
And that regeneration ends quicker with the Floralisk, but it stays longer with the Sagan Blob, even though it's 10% less.
Yeah, well, I don't know how that distribution goes. Like, if you're, let's say, two turns passed and you heal, like, I don't know, 20-30% or whatever, does that mean, well, actually, for 70%, 6 turns, that would be like 10-15%. But if you get hit, do you heal the same amount of HP? I don't know. Probably not. It's just a percentage. Okay. I think I answered my own question. Sorry.
I think of your maximum health.
Yeah, that's probably a percentage of your maximum health. Yeah. Troll, do you agree it would be to leave it at 8 here?
I'd say Gunterian is better purely because of the special ability, but
We,
that's about it. Or at least higher on B tier.
oh, you know what? You know what? I mean, yeah, that's tough. The Gunterian is like, yeah, in some situation it probably is better than the Gunterian, but I remember on those two, all three of us had like dividing opinions about them. But I'd say we can leave them as this for now.
I would say the Gunterian is better than the Yeti. The Yeri.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, okay, better. Is it better than the Golem though? Probably not.
No.
No.
I'd say
I
yes,
think
but mostly on higher difficulties, not on lower.
Well, I think on higher ones, the Golem would be more useful than the. Uh, which one were we talking about? The Sagan Blob. Sorry, not the Gunderian. Sorry,
Gunterian.
Gunderian. Nick, were you saying something?
yeah, I would say the Gunterian is better than the Yeti, but I wouldn't say he's better than the Golem. In my personal opinion, I think the Golem is slightly better than the skeleton as well, but I'm fine with things staying like this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could also make that argument, but they're kind of pretty much in the same rank space, I'd
Yeah, they're
say.
very similar.
Yeah. Now the S tier, those are the absolute best species to play with. And it's you could make an argument for each and every one of them being on the top of the S tier. When you compare the Cycladian with the Floralisk is more of a tankier priest knight type of build, but you could also use it with like a warrior man at arms or something. I'd still say Floralisk is on the bottom of S tier just because the the Cycladians and Glamourzons are better, slightly better than him. Um, what do you guys think?
Well, I disagree because the 30% damage bonus in the Knight is amazing, but that won't help you against Grand Champions. And the extra health from the Floralisk does. And the healing ability is also very useful with a health build. And yes, to stun an opponent for 2 rounds is amazing. But here you have 2 bonuses going into a fight, and with the Cycladian, you only have one buff when going against Grand Champions. A buff that is worth mentioning, that is.
You you can fight grand champions during the night. It's just that
Oh, yeah, wait, it's Starbound.
going to the Doomtrek Arena will make the game fast forward 3 hours. So if you went to Doomtrek at 3 a.m., when you get there, it will be 6 a.m. So it will be daytime.
Well, I think I'm putting things together and I'm messing things up in my head. It's been quite a journey, this whole video, but what I meant is Starbound Gladiator, you always fight during the day. So at the final boss, you go in with one buff instead of 2.
That's actually a good point to try to. That's a good way to try to scale them. How does the fight go playing as each of these three races against the Starbound? Which one fares the best? Now the thing with the Cycladian is the Call of the Sea is amazing, but it's only a one-time use thing, and you fight the Starbound in 3 stages. So that's kind of you have to use that very carefully and only if you really need it and when you really need it. The Floralisk, yeah, it's more of a constant state of having a lot of HP, even though its special ability is once per battle as well. Well, I mean the Glamourzons is once per battle as well, but the 5% damage when fighting during the day, she does get that. Starbound doesn't have sonic attacks, as far as I know.
But it does damage.
Yeah. So her size, so she does have 30. I mean, Glamourzons have 30% total, more total health as well as Floralisks. So, and the Cycladians can't use their Creature of the Night skill against the Starbound. That's the only fight that they can't use it against. So honestly, yeah, probably out of all three, the Glamourzons and the Floralisks are better at fighting the Starbound than the Cycladian. So you could also make the argument that like the Glamourzon is the absolute best of the S tier.
I think so.
Yeah. And the Cycladian and the Floralisk, you can also... I haven't played it with the Floralisk, that's the problem with my judging of it. But you guys have, and I've only heard good things. So you could also put it like above the Cycladian.
I would.
Tro, what about you?
I would.
Tro?
I would.
You would as well?
I would not put Floralisk above Cycladian.
That's an interesting dilemma. Okay, we'll leave it like this, and we'll let the audience judge for themselves how they would put it. Depend on if you're familiar with the game, the races and stuff like that. But for now, I think we can leave the list as it is. I think it's a pretty accurate list, considering all three of us had varying opinions on a number of the species, and there are 15. I keep switching between saying species and races. It's the same thing, but still. So yeah, there are 15 of them, and most of them, as you can see, are in B and C tier, which is actually, it's not bad. They're not like too bad. They're not exceedingly good. The best ones are the Glamourzon, Cycladians, and Floralisks. The Sagan Blob is debatable. Some of us put it in A, some of us put it in B tier. And the B tier is also, you could argue some of them could be A tier, but the D tier are very certain to be D tier because they're just awful, and they're the least useful out of all the species. And with that, I'd say our list is concluded. And thank you guys for being here, for discussing this with me. It has been fun and a pleasure. And I hope we will keep doing these as long as we can. And so yeah, this has been Kalinik along with Draw Project and General Niche. Sorry, let me say your
General Nietzsche.
Nietzsche.
General Nietzsche. It's like the story behind it is I was first just General Nick, but in a Q&A, Oliver pronounced my name as Nietzsche.
Huh.
And that sounds like a Polish version of my name. And since in Poland, let's just, how do I say it? Swords and Sandals is the most popular game. Where Swords and Sandals is the most popular is in Poland. So I thought, quite an honor. So let's just go for it.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting backstory to your name. But yeah, so yeah, that's about it for the list. Yeah, we shall do another one again. Let me just stop the